Tonight at 10, the Grenfell Tower inquiry hears from the man who lived in the flat where the fire started. Bahelu Kabedi said he was too frightened to give evidence in person and had lived in fear of reprisals. But his lawyer told the inquiry that when the blaze broke out in the kitchen, he'd done nothing wrong. He called 999 and alerted his neighbours.
It was accidental, and Mr. Kabedi bears no responsibility, directly or indirectly, for the fire, its spread, or the dreadful consequences that followed.
We'll have the latest from the inquiry also on the programme tonight. After more than 25 years in charge, the editor of the Daily Mail, Paul Dacre, is stepping down.
Are you bungling Brexit, Prime Minister?
Under pressure over Brexit, cabinet divisions as the government prepares to set out its plans to avoid a hard border in Northern Ireland. We'll have reaction from Westminster and from Brussels. Targeted by fraudsters, the boss of TSB admits that more than 1,000 customers lost money after the bank's computer meltdown in April. And the strange tale of the Mexican salamander and the nuns who could hold the key to saving it from extinction.
Coming up in Sports Day on BBC News, England consider the prospect of racism at the World Cup. But manager Gareth Southgate thinks walking off the pitch would be counterproductive.
Good evening. The Grenfell Tower inquiry has been told that police were so concerned about the safety of the man who lived in the flat where the fire started.
His fridge had exploded because it was faulty.
So it contracted out to a string of companies, including these four. But victims' lawyers say this is developing into a carousel of blame. They are angry that both the public sector bodies and private contractors have given little public detail so far about what happened.
The state palpably failed in its primary duty to protect its citizens. And as for the corporates, silence speaks 1,000 words.
Barrister Michael Mansfield wanted the inquiry to take a shortcut to draft immediate recommendations to improve safety for social housing tenants. Sid Ali Admani lived on floor 15.
Right now we're talking, there's people that are in risk in towers, there are risk even in houses. It's not, the risk is not, it doesn't become, since the Grenfell Tower, it's not about Grenfell Tower anymore, it's about the whole UK.
But we have had some bits of new information today. The inquiry was told it was the architect's Studio E which selected the cladding for use in the refurbishment, that the council was shown samples of that cladding several times in 2014, and that a fire assessor looked at the cladding at one point and said it needed attention.
The families of those lost at Grenfell and the survivors have been placed at the heart of this process, but they face a long wait for this inquiry's considered answers to their many questions. Tom Simons, BBC News, at the Grenfell inquiry.
The editor of the Daily Mail, Paul Dacre, has announced he is stepping down after more than 25 years in charge, ending one of the most influential and at times controversial reigns in British journalism. He will leave his day-to-day editorial responsibilities in November when he'll become chairman and editor-in-chief of Associated Newspapers. Our media editor, Amol Rajan, who broke the story, has this report.
That none of his successors will match. Sophie.
Amol, thank you. The Brexit Secretary, David Davis, has issued a stark warning to the EU not to punish the UK over Brexit. The Brexit. To leave the EU.
Brexit. There was one plain message to the EU today from the man in charge of the process.
Brexit.
European Union. The document has no specific time limit for close ties to the EU. One source told me it's like Hotel California. We check out of the European Union, but we never leave. What would be troubling for me and others who supported the Leave campaign is the idea of being locked into some single market type arrangement.
Brexit.
Leave the European Union.
in the European Union.
We'll speak to our Europe editor Katya Adler in Brussels, but first let's get more from our political editor Laura Kuenssberg in Westminster. And Laura, these proposals are expected to be published soon. What are they expected to say?
Well, Sophie, we know for many months, and our viewers will remember that Brexit, EU, Brussels, Brexit, what we were expecting tomorrow might not come tomorrow, and instead Brexit again,
EU, Brussels, Brexit, EU, Brussels, Brexit, all tumbling down.
Katya Adler in Brussels, Laura Kuenssberg in Westminster. Thank you both. Our health editor Hugh Pym is outside the Department of Health for us this evening. Any idea what this increase could be, Hugh?
Well, Sophie, Jeremy Hunt, in an interview with The Guardian, has said he's making the case for significant increases in NHS funding, but it's not clear what that is. Now, health think tanks today, the Treasury, though, is holding out for something nearer 3 or even below that, mindful of the public finances.
Now, this week across BBC News, we've been considering national identity within the UK using exclusive research to look at questions of belonging, tradition and expectations.
79% say they feel strongly British. That's more than the 62% who say they feel strongly Welsh. British identity is markedly less robust in Scotland than in Wales. 84% said they felt strongly Scottish, 59% strongly British. That figure falls further among younger people, 53% for those aged 18 to 24, 51% for those aged 25 to 49.
Conservationists from Chester Zoo have formed an unlikely partnership with an order of Mexican nuns to save a critically endangered amphibian from extinction. The axolotl is a salamander that is unique to Mexico, but it has been almost wiped out by pollution and overfishing. However, scientists say the nuns could hold the key to saving it. Our science correspondent Victoria Gill has sent this report from central Mexico.
Lake Pátzcuaro, central Mexico. The only place in the world where you just might find a critically endangered axolotl, known locally as the achoque. This vast lake used to be teeming with this species of axolotl, but now the scientists studying them have set out traps to catch them, and this is a half-kilometre long line with 100 traps, and they're hoping to find just 2 or 3 they can take some samples from. Scientists are here on a mission to prevent these strange amphibians from being wiped out completely.
Deforestation, which is dragging down sediments to the lake. We have as well pollution. We probably took it now to make it official that the species is close to extinction. So it was really, we arrived right at the last minute.
This emergency effort involves rearing the axolotls in captivity, and that's where some unexpected experts come in. The Sisters of the Immaculate Health, who run a true sanctuary for this species.
It's
a lot of work and a great deal of sacrifice, but it's worth it to work with nature and to protect what God has given us.
We're going to take now the DNA from the robin, the tongue.
But while conservationists and their devout collaborators work together to save a species that's disappearing from the wild, axolotls are bred in their thousands in laboratories around the world.
Most people study them because of their ability to regenerate, and it's remarkable. So let's say the limb gets bit off here, above the elbow. What will happen is the limb will just regenerate a perfect mirror image of the limb on the other side. And so many people hope that we can identify some latent ability to regenerate in human tissues by studying and understanding how axolotls regenerate.
This is real good.
Does it work? Is it for the cough? And for centuries, these healing abilities have fueled a belief that consuming axolotl can cure almost any respiratory ailment.
¿Y esta es buena para la tos, dicen?
And the original recipe for this remarkable medicine? Developed by the sisters themselves. Nuns here started breeding the animals 30 years ago to sustain the supply of this ancient remedy's key ingredient. That's what made them such axolotl experts. Now, the quiet dedication of this religious community could provide a future for a creature from which we have so much to learn.
Victoria Gill with that report from Mexico. Well, that's it from us. Newsnight is coming up on BBC Two, but now here on BBC One, it is time for the news where you are. Good night.